Oscar Wilde once said, "Men marry because they are tired. Women because they are curious. Both are disappointed." But is that really the case? Welcome to our exploration of the age-old institution of marriage, a subject that has been the source of joy, sorrow, comedy and tragedy in equal measure. And we're not just talking about the cake cutting or the first dance. Oh no, we're delving into the nitty-gritty, the for better or worse of it all. Why do we tie the knot? Is it for love, security, companionship, or maybe it's just for the fancy party and the gifts? Let's peel back the layers, challenge the stereotypes and ask the hard questions. Are we merely tired or curious, as Mr. Wilde suggests? Or is there more to this game of love and commitment that meets the eye? So buckle up as we dive deep into the world of I do's and I don'ts. Our first guest is Miss Daisy, a hopeless romantic who believes in fairy tales and happy endings. Let's delve into Daisy's world, a world where love is a potent potion, commitment is a sacred covenant, and the magic of wedding ceremonies is a spectacle to behold. Marriage, Daisy begins, is a beautiful journey, a partnership that transcends the mundane. It's a bond that strengthens with time, a promise of growing old together, hand in hand, heart to heart. Ah, the romanticism of it. Daisy's eyes twinkle as she talks about the wedding ceremony. It's enchanting, isn't it? The white dress, the vows, the first dance. It's like a scene straight out of a Disney movie. It's the beginning of a beautiful story, a story of love, of togetherness. Now let's take a step back and add a pinch of reality to Daisy's fairy tale. It's true that marriage can be a beautiful journey, but it's also filled with road bumps and detours. It's a partnership, yes, but it's also a test of patience, a balancing act of responsibilities. Daisy's dreamy vision of growing old together while heartwarming doesn't quite capture the nuances of navigating through life's storms hand in hand, heart to heart. And the magic of the wedding ceremony? It's a spectacle indeed. The white dress, the vows, the first dance, they all make for a picture-perfect scene. But beyond the charm and the enchantment lies the reality of a marriage. The shared dreams, the compromises, the arguments and the making up. A Disney movie, it might not be, but a story of love and togetherness, it surely is. Well, that was a fairy tale. But what about those who see marriage as a roller coaster ride? Scene script: meet Mr. Grumpy, a cynical bachelor who'd rather wrestle a crocodile than get hitched. Our conversation starts on a high note with Mr. Grumpy, whose nickname is as fitting as a glove. He views marriage as a straitjacket, a surefire way to bid adieu to his freedom. He says, one day you're free as a bird, the next you're tethered to a nest. Now imagine a life where the only decisions you make are what Netflix show to binge on next. Sounds like a dream, doesn't it? Well, not for Mr. Grumpy. He fears the loss of his individuality. He worries about being moulded, shaped and kneaded like a lump of dough until he fits the perfect husband mould. But let's flip this coin over, shall we? One might argue that marriage offers companionship, a partner to navigate life's choppy waters. When the nights get lonely and the walls start closing in, wouldn't it be nice to have a hand to hold? Mr. Grumpy retorts, I have my friends for that. And the best part, I can choose when to see them. He relishes the flexibility of his bachelorhood, the ability to change his plans at the drop of a hat. But what about stability? The comfort of knowing that you have someone to rely on come what may. Isn't there a certain charm in knowing that there's a light burning for you at home, no matter how late it is? Mr. Grumpy, ever the cynic, dismisses this with a wave of his hand. Stability's overrated. It's just another word for monotony. Give me the thrill of the unknown any day. As we wrap up our chat, it's clear that Mr. Grumpy is as firm in his beliefs as ever. His views might seem extreme to some, but they offer a fresh perspective on a centuries-old institution. Interesting. So we've heard from a hopeless romantic and a cynical bachelor, but what about those who've been there, done that? Lastly, let's hear from Mrs. Wisdom, a seasoned spouse with 40 years of marriage under her belt. Now, Mrs. Wisdom has seen it all, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. She's the kind who's weathered the storms and savoured the sunshine, and she's here today to share a few nuggets of wisdom. She tells us that marriage, like a good cup of English tea, is all about balance, too much sugar, and it's overly sweet, too little and it's bitter. It's the same with marriage. Too much of one thing can tip the scales. It's about finding that just right balance between love, respect, patience, and understanding. Mrs. Wisdom chuckles as she shares that patience, above all, is paramount. You'll need a boatload of it, she says. And understanding? It's the compass that guides you through the labyrinth of marriage, she adds, with a twinkle in her eye. She emphasizes that marriage is not always a bed of roses, but the thorns are what make the roses worth it. It's about embracing the good times and the bad, the laughter and the tears. Now, isn't it fascinating how Mrs. Wisdom's experience-laden perspective contrasts with the naive hopefulness of our romantic and the cynical skepticism of our bachelor? Each perspective, a different lens through which we view this complex institution called marriage. So there you have it, 3 different perspectives, each with its own flavor of humor. Before we sign off, let's not forget the famous saying, "Marriage is the chief cause of divorce." It's a dark joke, but it does hold a grain of truth. Amidst the highs and lows, the vows and the rows, there's an undeniable humor that sometimes only marriage can offer. It's a reminder that there's no perfect relationship, and it's often the imperfections that make it all the more worthwhile. Remember, folks, whether you're a Miss Daisy, a Mr. Grumpy, or a Mrs. Wisdom, keep your sense of humor handy. You're going to need it.